Shabbat Shalom Yasharallah. Welcome to part one of the line-by-line reading from the book of 2 Kings. Before we get started, let's pray to Abba and ask for guidance. Heavenly Father, high in heaven, hallowed be thy name. We thank you and we love you for just giving us this opportunity to be a light in darkness. We ask to do your will and your will alone. So if there's anything from each and every person in this, a part of this live now or watching this later, that you can bestow upon them the ruach of understanding and discernment to give us eyes and ears in these latter days. I pray for the family that are struggling, that Akoti Jenny mentioned with illness. I pray for their well-being and for them to listen to your calling and to get on the right track so they can be healed in obedience. And through all of us that's struggling and fighting these spiritual battles while being in the physical flesh, I pray for strength and mercy upon us all. Bahashem Yasha, send the Ruach Kodesh to guide this message, and Amen and Amen. Let's begin. The line-by-line reading of 2 Kings. We will be covering chapters 1 through chapter 5 today. Let's begin. Chapter 1.
The second book of Kings.
Oh, snap. At the last second, let's blow the trumpets, because Numbers 10:10. We shall blow the trumpets on his solemn feast days. Let's let Hasatan know that we here keeping these set apart assemblies. Appreciate it, Troy, for the reminder. Now let's begin. Then,
Chapter 1. And Moab rebelled against Israel after the death of Ahab. And Isaiah fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber that was in Samaria, and was sick. And he sent messengers and said unto them, Go, inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, whether I shall recover of this disease.
All right, so from the jump, the death of Ahab happened in the last reading of 2 Kings 22:51. Yeah, just showing you this exchange happened in the last book of 1 Kings. And then going to verse 2 here, we see here at that he fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber. I wanted to touch on that because me personally, let's see the other translation here. See, lattice. I didn't know what it was initially. So just wanted to show you. It's pretty much what it is. The lattice is like this design in the middle. So it's like if you were leaning on a balcony and this fell through, is what happened to him. And then also, I wanted to, Beelzebub in the Septuagint is translated as Balefly, which is literally what Beelzebub means, Lord of the Fly. So, just interesting information. Whatever Lord of the Fly, whatever that's supposed to mean. All right. So the king fell through the lattice, some sort of balcony. He hurt himself and it made him fall sick. And he inquired for Baal, Lord of the Flies, if he would recover. Verse 3.
But the angel of the Lord said to Elijah the Tishbite, Arise, go up to meet the messengers of the king of Samaria, and say unto them, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that ye go to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Now therefore thus saith the Lord, Thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And Elijah departed. And when the messengers turned back unto him, he said unto them, Why are ye now turned back? And they said unto him, There came a man up to meet us, and said unto us, Go, turn again unto the king that sent you, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Is it not because there is not a God in Israel that thou sendest to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron? Therefore thou shalt not come down from that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. And he said unto them, What manner of man was he which came up to meet you, and told you these words? And they answered him, He was an hairy man, and girt with a girdle of leather about his loins. And he said, It is Elijah the Tishbite.
All right, so very clearly put, he became ill through the injury that he had through the fall. And since he didn't inquire of the Most High, he asked Beelzebub, or he asked his servants to acquire from Beelzebub. The Most High said that, if you want to acquire other gods, then you will certainly die. It's just very straightforward. And then we have a description of Elijah, a hairy man with a leather girdle about his loins. So it's like right at his waist to stomach. He's wearing this leather girdle. Hairy man. Interesting. But that is Elijah. Verse 9.
Then the king sent unto him a captain of 50 with his 50. And he went up to him, and behold, he sat on the top of an hill. And he spake unto him, Thou man of God, the king hath said, Come down. And Elijah answered and said to the captain of 50, If I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. And there came down fire from heaven, and consumed him and his 50. Again also he sent unto him another captain of 50 with his 50. And he answered and said unto him, O man of God, thus hath the king said, Come down quickly. And Elijah answered and said unto them, If I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven, and consume thee and thy 50. And the fire of God came down from heaven, and consumed him and his 50. And he sent again a captain of the third 50 with his 50. And the third captain of the 50 went up, and came and fell on his knees before Elijah, and besought him, and said unto him, O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 thy servants be precious in thy sight. Behold, there came fire down from heaven, and burnt up the two captains of the former 50s with their 50s. Therefore let my life now be precious in thy sight. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, Go down with him, be not afraid of him. And he rose, and went down with him unto the king.
All right, so let's talk about this, right? What's going on? After Elijah met the servants of the king, and he told them that he will die because he didn't inquire the Most High for his illness, the king sends a captain with 50 soldiers. And he does it 3 times. The first 2 times, Elijah has fire comes down and burns them alive. And then the third company is starting to get the message, or they have received the message that Elijah is a man of the Most High and don't mess with him. And so they plead with him, and they're just like, hey, don't kill us. We're just here because we have to be here, orders of the king. And what has happened is, I'll let scripture say it. Deuteronomy 11:25. There shall no man be able to stand before you. For the Most High, your Elohai, shall lay the fear of you and the dread of you upon all the land that ye shall tread upon, as he has said unto you. Obviously, this is speaking in the time of Moses and Joshua. But the Most High is the same yesterday and today. And this is what he's doing. the king obviously isn't happy with the judgment of his death. He says, why is he sending 50 soldiers to ask Elijah to come? Why? It's because he's trying to muscle Elijah. He's trying to obviously like strong arm him. And so that's the message here, is that Elijah's like, we're not doing that. The Most High is going to make sure y'all don't like mess with me for just sending a message. And that's what happened. By the last 50 that came, they were in fear. It wasn't the 50 like, come on, we're taking you to the king. They were like, please come with us. Please do not hurt us. So the roles have changed. Now the 50 are in fear of Elijah, and they're not going to touch Elijah because they know the Most High is with him. He has the Most High has struck fear into the soldiers of the king. All right, let's continue here. Verse 16.
And he said unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Forasmuch as thou hast sent messengers to inquire of Baal-zebub, the god of Ekron, is it not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word? Therefore thou shalt not come down off that bed on which thou art gone up, but shalt surely die. So he died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. And Jehoram reigned in his stead in the 2nd year of Jehoram the son of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, because he had no son. Now the rest of the acts of Ahaziah, which he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Israel?
And every time we have a king exchange, we refer back to our chart. So at this portion, I have to say it does get a little confusing with the names, because they have the same names for the king of Judah and Israel for a good amount of time. And let's look at it. We see right here Ahaziah. So Ahaziah, king of Israel, just passed away. And you see the name here, Jehoram. This is Jehoram too. This is just a shorter form for it. And this is what I mean. And we'll see, but that's why we're going to track it and make sure we're paying attention to who we are reading and comprehending here. And let me see. Yeah, Jehoram, right? Jehoram, the son of, let's see here. Here. Like I said, we're going to see what's up. But right here, this is the king exchange we're going with. Joram from Ahaziah. That's the exchange happening right now. And then I added this one because this one isn't focused on keeping the timeline with the king. So I found another chart here. And we're going to see that, Jehoram, a.k.a. Joram, that all three of these kings, Ahab as Ahaziah and Jehoram of king of Israel, all was a part of Jehoshaphat's reign at one point. And so we're just going to keep tracking. In all the acts of Ahaziah, it actually is not much mentioned in at least the books we have of the Chronicles of the Kings, but in which we went over the last portion in 1 Kings, 2 Chronicles 20, 35 through 37. After this, did Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, join himself to Ahaziah, king of Israel, who did very wickedly. And he joined himself with him to make ships, etc., etc. So this is just a little bit mentioned with Ahaziah. And once again, how during his reign, it was still king of Judah, Jehoshaphat, as we read, was still king during Ahaziah's reign. All right. That is chapter 1. Chapter 2.
2 Kings 2. And it came to pass, when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And Elijah said unto Elisha, Tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Bethel. And Elisha said unto him, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they went down to Bethel.
All right. So before Elijah will be taken up into heaven by a whirlwind, I wanted to bring up all the other people. Can someone name, I'll give you the number, at least the number that I'm aware of, that there is 4 total people that have been taken up. I'll give y'all like 10 seconds. Anyone can name the 4 before I mention them. Come on, put them all in one message, guys. We're on Elijah. Y'all don't have to you say Elijah. Boom. There we go. Ding, ding, ding. Winner, winner. We got Paul. Paul got it. Obviously, Elijah, Enoch was the first, Ezra, and Baruch. And for those saying Mashiach was not taken up in the flesh. He was taken up in the spirit. Totally different. The Mashiach is the only one taken up in spirit. And it matters because he is the only one that's supposed to be taken up in spirit. That's a whole nother teaching, but they are in a different, they are, which we're going to cover this portion. We'll get to it. I want to get ahead. So let's just talk about, let me show you the scripture that confirms the 4. So we have Enoch, Genesis 5:24, and Enoch walked with Elohim, and he was not, for Elohim took him. And the rest is Apocrypha. We're going to go to Ezra, 2nd Ezra, or 4th Ezra, chapter 14, verse 8 and 9. Lay up in your heart the signs that I have shown you, the dreams that you have seen, the interpretations that you have heard. For you shall be taken up from among men, and henceforth you shall live with my son and with those who are like you. He's not the only one. And obviously, Mashiach's up there, but like I said, his is Mashiach's obviously different until the times are ended. And now Baruch, chapter 48. This is 2nd Baruch, chapter 48, verse 30. Verse 30 here. Therefore, you shall surely be taken up as I before told you. All right. So now you know. If you didn't know, now you know, and you got the precepts to prove it. We'll go a little bit deeper in a little bit after he is taken up, Elijah. And verse 1, I'm at verse 2. I just also wanted to say that we're going to see that this happens in a few cities. This is just going to get repeated, but with a different town or city they're in. That Elijah is about to leave, and he knows he's about to be taken up. And he keeps telling Elisha that you don't have to follow me. You can stay here. And Elisha says, I will follow you until you leave. And I'm just setting it up because we're going to see it multiple times. And if you're thinking what's going on, that's just simply what it is. It's just the story of the day that Elisha was sticking to Elijah because he loved him. He looked up to him and he wanted to see him all the way through until he was taken. That's what's going on here. So let's continue with that now in verse 3.
And the sons of the prophets that were at Bethel came forth to Elisha, and said unto him, Knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he said, Yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace.
And you see that? Take away thy master from thy head today. I mean, this sounds like what 1 Corinthians 10. That there is always an order. And that's what the reference are saying. His head, your master, your lead is leaving today. And Elisha's like, I know, I know. Verse 4.
And Elijah said unto him, Elisha, tarry here, I pray thee, for the Lord hath sent me to Jericho. And he said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. So they came to Jericho. And the sons of the prophets that were at Jericho came to Elisha, and said unto him, Knowest thou that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And he answered, Yea, I know it. Hold ye your peace. And Elijah said unto him, Tarry, I pray thee here, for the Lord hath sent me to Jordan. And he said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And they two went on. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went, and stood to view afar off. And they too stood by Jordan. And Elijah took his mantle, and wrapped it together, and smote the waters. And they were divided hither and thither, so that they too went over on dry ground.
I don't know if the average reader of the book realizes that what happened at the Red Sea, the first time we read about the seas opening and walking on dry ground, that this happens over and over and over again and over again. Like, I just don't know. We realize it, that this is one of the many works that has gone through the hands of the prophets all throughout history, and it still will happen one more again. And so let's do a quick recap. We have the original story that we first hear about this from the Exodus. We got the verse, Exodus chapter 14, verse 22. And the children of Yasharallah went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground. The waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on the left. We see it again in the book of Joshua, chapter 3, verse 17. And the priests that bear the ark of the covenant of the Most High stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan. And all the Israelites passed over on dry ground until all the people were passed clean over Jordan. We also have I'll go ahead and say this. This is the second Exodus. This is the one that hasn't happened yet. In Isaiah 27:12, and it shall come to pass that in that day that the Most High shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered one by one. When it says beat off, a little weird vocabulary, but he will make a path through the channels of the river so you can be gathered, as we've read in multiple precepts. And then even in 2nd Esdras, chapter 13, verse 40, with the northern kingdom, when they will be taken away from their land, as we see here, the 10 tribes, which is the 10 tribes outside of Judah and Benjamin, that when they will be led away from their own land, from the king of the Assyrians, verse 41. Verse 44. So summarizing all of this to verse 44. For at that time the Most High performed signs for them and stopped the channels of the river until they had passed over. This is just another way of saying what we just read in Isaiah. He beat off from the channels of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered. So it's the same thing, right? Same exact. Where am I at? Where's it at? Oh my goodness. Second Esdras. There we go. Stop the channels of river until they passed over. So just want to point out that this miracle that the Most High does, his people have been doing all throughout the scriptures, even with Elijah. Verse 9.
And it came to pass, when they were gone over, that Elijah said unto Elisha, Ask what I shall do for thee, before I be taken away from thee. And Elisha said, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. And he said, Thou hast asked a hard thing. Nevertheless, if thou see me when I am taken from thee, it shall be so unto thee. But if not, it shall not be so. And it came to pass, as they still went on and talked, that behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, and horses of fire, and parted them both asunder. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven.
All right. So now officially went up in a whirlwind. So we see that chariots of fire all throughout, especially Enoch. And when you talk about the heavens, and even in the book of Revelation, they even mention horsemen, that the horsemen in Revelation are still talking about spiritual beings, angels. And so this idea of horses and chariots is nothing new in the canon, and also extended in the book of Enoch. Enoch 75, verse 8. This is the luminary section, and this is even talking about the spirit of the sun. And I saw the chariots in heaven running in the world above those portals in which revolve the stars that never set. And so many chariots, these spirits run on what they call chariots and horses. Spiritual, obviously. And then I wanted to read in 1 Maccabees 2:58 that Elijah, because of great zeal for the law, was taken up into heaven. Boy, why was he taken up? Because he loved the Most High through the law. Amen to that. It's like nowadays, it's like, you know what? We should not keep the law. And everyone that was keeping the law before would now be cursed if they kept the law, even though the law was the difference in who was considered righteous. Don't even get me started on that weird, quirky teachings of churchianity. It makes zero sense, especially when he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But all right, let's get into more detail. I wanted to get into Enoch. Enoch was one of the few taken up that is at least recorded. I believe that there is even more people that were taken up that wasn't recorded, because not everything was recorded. But that's just what I think. Obviously, I'm not trying to say it is a factual thing, but even with when we were just reading with Ezra, it's like there will be others like you. I feel like it's more than just 3 or 4. Okay, so Enoch chapter 60, verse 8. So it starts off talking about Behemoth. But the male is named Behemoth, who accompanied with his beast a waste wilderness named Dudai Dane, on the east of the garden. And real quick, I'm going to finish it. But before I finish that, I wanted to just put in reference the east of the garden in Genesis 3:23. Therefore, the Most High sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was taken. Oh, man, hold on. Is it the verse before or after? It tells you that the Garden of Eden is on the east. I think I forgot a verse here. 1 second. Oh, it's the next verse. Let me add it real quick. All right. Okay, Genesis 3, already read 23. So he drove out the man and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims and a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. So, east of the garden is the most precious part of the Garden of Eden. And so that being said, Behemoth is in the Garden of Eden. And this is where I say all of this because Enoch tells us where the people that are taken up goes. They go back to the garden on the east of the garden where the elect and righteous dwell. Where my grandfather, this is Noah right here. This is Noah speaking. So Noah grandfather is Enoch, where my grandfather was taken up, the seventh from Adam, Enoch, the first man whom the Most High of spirits created. Well, talking about Adam. So that is where they're dwelling, back where everything started with Adam. And then let's finish the understanding off with Hebrews 11:5. By faith, Enoch was translated that he should not see death. So we see by the law and by faith. How about that? What are by scripture? What was the requirements? Oh, the same requirements we all have. There's nothing new. Faith and obedience. They just did it better than majority of folks. So they were able to be translated earlier. It was not found because Hayah had translated him for before his translation. He had this testimony that he pleased Elohim. And we all pray to be accounted worthy to do the same. All right. And now verse 12.
And Elisha saw it, and he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel, and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more. And he took hold of his own clothes, and rent them in two pieces. He took up also the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and went back and stood by the bank of Jordan. And he took the mantle of Elijah that fell from him, and smote the waters, and said, where is the Lord God of Elijah? And when he also had smitten the waters, they parted hither and thither, and Elisha went over.
So we see that Elisha, I waited to add that, Elisha was a part of the prophets that parted a river or a sea of water. You know, y'all better take these notes. You don't know what will be on the next quiz. And I also have another note to read Enoch 70 before we continue here. So let's go read Enoch 70, verse 1 through 4. And it came to pass after this that his name during his lifetime was raised aloft to that Son of Man and to the Adon of spirits from amongst those who dwell on earth. Yes, this is talking about Enoch being taken up. And That's what it says, that his name during his lifetime was raised aloft to that Son of Man, Mashiach, and to the Adonis spirits, the Father, from amongst those who dwell on earth. And he was raised aloft on the chariots of the Spirit. This is the description of Enoch being taken. Does it not sound the same? A chariot of fire. What is Abba's spirit symbolized through fire? That's the burning bush. The Ruach is fire. So Enoch went up in the spirit of the chariot of a spirit. Fire. Same thing. Just a different way of speaking it. And his name vanished among them. Man, look how similar this sounds. And he saw him no more. And from that day, I was no longer numbered amongst them. And he set me between the two winds, between the north and the west, where the angels took the cords to measure for me the place for the righteous. The elect and righteous, which we know where it's in the east of Eden. And there I saw the first fathers and the righteous who from the beginning dwell in that place. And that's what I said. This is Enoch. Who is Enoch speaking of here? That's what I'm saying. We don't know how many people have been taken up, but we'll just go with what Abba gave us in scripture. That's all that matters, or he would have told us. All right, so just a quick breakdown on idea of being taken up, who's been taken up, at least that we know of, and where did they go? Now we know. And so now that Elijah has been taken up, Elisha parted the river or the sea. I think it's the river of Jordan? Yeah, Jordan. And now begins Elisha as the head of the prophets. Verse 15.
And when the sons of the prophets which were to view at Jericho saw him, they said, The spirit of Elijah doth rest on Elisha. And they came to meet him, and bowed themselves to the ground before him. And they said unto him, Behold now, there be with thy servants 50 strong men. Let them go, we pray thee, and seek thy master, lest peradventure the Spirit of the Lord hath taken him up, and cast him upon some mountain, or into some valley. And he said, Ye shall not send. And when they urged him till he was ashamed, he said, Send. They sent therefore 50 men, and they sought 3 days, but found him not. And when they came again to him, for he tarried at Jericho, he said unto them, Did I not say unto you, Go not?
Simply put, the people were like, let's make sure he wasn't dropped somewhere in the mountains or the valleys. And Elisha's like, you really don't have to. But they're like, they pushed him. It pushed him. And so he said, go ahead. Go ahead. And then he says, I told you. That's pretty much what's going on here. It's like, I told you so. Verse 19 now.
And the men of the city said unto Elisha, Behold, I pray thee, the situation of this city is pleasant, as my Lord seeth. But the water is not, and the ground barren. And he said, Bring me a new cruse, and put salt therein. And they brought it to him. And he went forth unto the spring of the waters, and cast the salt in there, and said, Thus saith the Lord, I have healed these waters. There shall not be from thence any more death or barren land. So the waters were healed unto this day, according to the saying of Elisha, which he spake.
Something I found interesting, it just dawned on me when I was reading this, that the procedure that Elisha did to heal the land in water. So we know that the water is not, the water was not clean and the ground was barren. And so he took a cruse, like a bucket, and he put salt therein. And he went forth into the spring of the waters and cast the salt in there. Very interesting thing about this is that it logically makes sense. Did you know salt mixed with water can be used as a natural cleaning solution for various surfaces, helping to remove grease, grime, stains, even some bacteria, particularly effective on kitchen surfaces, drains, even for spot cleaning fabrics, etc., etc. Salt is a cleaning agent when mixed with water. And then adding a small amount of salt to your drinking water helps replenish these lost electrolytes, promoting better water absorption and preventing dehydration. What was the land? Dehydrated. That's funny because we're from the dirt. And the way that Elisha healed the water, he mixed salt because salt is a cleaning agent. And then the salt also for our bodies helps us replenish from dehydration, which was the land. So salt is known for as a cleaning agent within water and for hydration. And that's exactly what happened to the water and the land. Very interesting, especially, like I said, the fact that we are dirt. And this is the salt would do the same thing for us in our bodies. A lot of good stuff from salt. Use appropriately. And yeah, there's a lot of bad salt out there. You know, modern preservatives added and whatnot. But interesting point there. All right, let's finish the chapter, verse 23.
And he went up from thence unto Bethel, and as he was going up by the way, there came forth little children out of the city, and mocked him, and said unto him, Go up, thou bald head, go up, thou bald head. And he turned back, and looked on them, and cursed them in the name of the Lord. And there came forth 2 she-bears out of the wood, and tare 42 children of them. And he went from thence to Mount Carmel, and from thence he returned to Samaria.
All right, so let's talk about this. The last few verses, 23 to 25. This is one of the verses people that are anti-Bible would like to bring up and be like, yeah, this is crazy. And you know, other people. So let's just talk about it here. So if we would have looked up the word for the children, it pretty much means young people. It doesn't, we don't know the age of these so-called children, but there are younger people. So that being said, all I have to say about this is that these children or young people are old enough to be judged. That's what's going on here. And they were judged as wicked young folks. And what I have to say about this is that as readers of the word and believers of the Most High, that he is a just Elohim. He is not a respecter of persons. That you read this and you just got to understand that these young people had to be downright wicked. This was they just gave us a little snapshot of their annoyance from like the core of who they were, that they're mocking a prophet of the Most High. They're clowning them. They're being bad juveniles. And they got placed on that judgment. If they were 8 years old, I'm 100% sure they would have been too young for this type of judgment. But it says, like I said, in the context, These could be young adults. They could be 17 years old. That's old enough for judgment. You know better at that time. And if these young people were that wicked and the Most High had this judgment upon them, then trust your Elohim. Trust him or not. But at the end of the day, he's the one that finalized this call that Elisha made. And that's just what it is. Like it or not, Elohim's a righteous judge, and trust his judgment, because we don't know the half of the story, obviously. Chapter 3 of 2 Kings. Let's read.
2 Kings 3. Now Jehoram the son of Ahab began to reign over Israel in Samaria the 18th year of Jehoshaphat king of Judah, and reigned 12 years.
So just go back. So I just want. So it says in verse 1, Jehoram, son of Ahab, began to reign over Israel in the 18th year of Jehoshaphat the king. So that's what we're saying here, that the beginning of his reign was at the end of Jehoshaphat, but Jehoshaphat is a part of all three of these kings' stories at one point. Verse 2.
And he wrought evil in the sight of the Lord, but not like his father and like his mother, for he put away the image of Baal that his father had made. Nevertheless, he cleaved unto the sins of Jeroboam the son of Nebat, which made Israel to sin. He departed not therefrom. And Mesha king of Moab was a sheep master, and rendered unto the king of Israel 100,000 lambs and 100,000 rams with the wool. But it came to pass, when Ahab was dead, that the king of Moab rebelled against the king of Israel. And King Jehoram went out of Samaria the same time, and numbered all Israel. And he went and sent to Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, saying, The king of Moab hath rebelled against me. Wilt thou go with me against Moab to battle? And he said, I will go up. I am as thou art, my people as thy people, and my horses as thy horses.
And we've read this before. Jehoshaphat is a loving king of Judah over the children of Israel. Like, he just, he's always there for them. I don't know what they do for him in the sense of the full picture, but he has their back. We saw this in 1 Kings 22:4. And Jehoshaphat said, and this was to Ahab, wilt thou go with me to battle? And he says the same exact thing, right? And yeah, this is just, this same story, just showing you that that is the king of Ahab there. Let's keep reading now.
And he said, Which way shall we go up? And he answered, The way through the wilderness of Edom. So the king of Israel went, and the king of Judah, and the king of Edom, and they fetched a compass of 7 days' journey, and there was no water for the host, and for the cattle that followed them. And the king of Israel said, Alas, that the Lord hath called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab. But Jehoshaphat said, Is there not here a prophet of the Lord, that we may inquire of the Lord by him? And one of the king of Israel's servants answered and said, Here is Elisha the son of Shaphat, which poured water on the hands of Elijah.
Okay, this is the problem with going to war, or, doing a list of things with wicked people. Look at what the king of Israel said. Like, Jehoshaphat's right there, bruh. He talking about him. At last, the Most High has called these 3 kings together The three kings is Israel, Judah, and Edom, to deliver them into the hand of Moab. I would have looked at him and been like, yo, speak for yourself, right? Why are you trying to curse me? Why are you saying the Most High set us up for all of us to die? That's legit what this wicked king is saying. Jehoram, like, why are you saying that? And then, but Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet that we may acquire? And this is repeated history for Jehoshaphat. We saw this also in 1 Kings 22:7 with Ahab. And Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet of the Most High besides that we may acquire of him? Because the king and his prophets, we see, are they give different messages. They're mixed messages that the Most High did not tell them, or a familiar spirit told them, but they're not getting their information in obviously faith by the Most High. Clear issue. And that's why in 2 Chronicles 19:2, it reads this. And Jehu, the seer, went out to meet him and said to King Jehoshaphat, shouldst thou help the ungodly and love them that hate the Most High, therefore is wrath upon thee from before Hayah. Because it's a clear problem. You're going to war and doing things with wicked individuals, and you see the advice, discernment, and message is completely off. Y'all are on two different pages. Y'all shouldn't be doing this together, and the Most High confirms this in 2 Chronicles, but Jehoshaphat helps all these kings of Israel for whichever reason. But we see it in the story why this is a problem. Verse 12.
And Jehoshaphat said, the word of the Lord is with him. So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat and the king of Edom went down to him. And Elisha said unto the king of Israel, what have I to do with thee? Get thee to the prophets of thy father, and to the prophets of thy mother. And the king of Israel said unto him, nay, for the Lord hath called these three kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab.
You see this? He keeps saying it. I would be so bothered. Like, stop saying that, man. Speaking on behalf of the Most High. He's straight up saying, for the Most High has called these three kings to be delivered in the hand of Moab. That's just crazy talk.
And Elisha said, as the Lord of hosts liveth, before whom I stand, surely, were it not that I regard the presence of Jehoshaphat the king of Judah, I would not look toward thee, nor see thee. But now bring me a minstrel. And it came to pass, when the minstrel played, that the hand of the Lord came upon him.
And just to make it clear, let me see this other translation. Yes, the minstrel is a harpist. To make it that clear. So he called a harpist to play. And through that, he received a message. It doesn't really give much detail on why, or any reason why he called a harpist to receive a message, but he did. And I mean, it just goes to show you that music can be a very powerful instrument. And the fact in verse 14 that Elisha says that they will live because of Jehoshaphat. And that's why I was like, Jehoshaphat is a righteous king. So why are you saying that Jehoshaphat shall be delivered? And the opposite is what is going to happen because the presence of King Jehoshaphat.
He said, thus saith the Lord, make this valley full of ditches. For thus saith the Lord, Ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that ye may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts. And this is but a light thing in the sight of the Lord. He will deliver the Moabites also into your hand. And ye shall smite every fenced city and every choice city, and shall fell every good tree, and stop all wells of water, and mar every good piece of land with stones. And it came to pass in the morning, when the meat offering was offered, that behold, there came water by the way of Edom, and the country was filled with water.
So in the same day, he's like, this is a simple, light thing for the Most High. I love it. He's like, understand who the Most High is. He's like, this is but a light thing, or in the Berean translation, this is a simple matter in the sight of the Most High. I love it. He's like, I'm going to give you water to drink, and I'm going to defeat your enemies without your help. Watch me work.
And when all the Moabites heard that the kings were come up to fight against them, they gathered all that were able to put on armor, and upward and stood in the border.
Oh, 1 second. I did have a note in verse 20. Yeah. And it came to pass in the morning when the meat offering was offered. I just wanted to give a little precept on the morning offerings. Numbers 28, 3 and 4. And thou shalt say unto them, this is the offering made by fire, which ye shall offer unto the Most High. 2 lambs of the first year without spot, day by day, for a continual burnt offering. The one lamb shall thou offer in the morning, and the other lamb shalt thou offer at evening. So there's more to it. Keep reading in the chapter, but just pointing out, this is the morning offering he was referring to in a nutshell. The one that happens day by day. So, and it came to pass in the morning when the meat offering was offered, that behold, there came water by the way of Edom. Then the Moabites gathered themselves, and
they rose up early in the morning, and the sun shone upon the water. And the Moabites saw the water on the other side as red as blood. And they said, this is blood. The kings are surely slain, and they have smitten one another. Now, therefore, Moab to the spoil. And when they came to the camp of Israel, the Israelites rose up and smote the Moabites, so that they fled before them. But they went forward, smiting the Moabites, even in their country. And they beat down the cities, and on every good piece of land cast every man his stone, and filled it. And they stopped all the wells of water, and felled all the good trees. Only in Kir Hareseth left they the stones thereof. Howbeit the slingers went about it, and smote it. And when the king of Moab saw that the battle was too sore for him, he took with him 700 men that drew swords to break through even unto the kings of Edom, but they could not. Then he took his eldest son that should have reigned in his stead, and offered him for a burnt offering upon the wall. And there was great indignation against Israel, and they departed from him, and returned to their own land.
Great victory through the Most High. And verse 27, the king of the Moabites sacrificed his son. Well, this is what they do. We read in 1 Kings 11:33 about Shamash, the god of the Moabites and the Amorites. And we talked about this in 1 Kings about Shamash being one and the same with Remphan or Chuin, depending on the translation in the book. But these are all the same deity represented by Saturn. And Remphan is always mentioned with Malak. It's just like I said, spelling and whatnot may differ, but the Amorites and the Moabite, Remphan and Malak is a sacrificial. Malak is a sacrificial altar for the gods. And that's the whole thing. By no coincidence, the king of the Moabites sacrificed his child because that's literally what that people do. Remphan and Malak worship, that's literally their ritual. So I guess it was his last plea to save him in verse 27 by sacrificing his son to their gods. All right, chapter 4.
Second Kings 4.
And so when we read about Elijah, and he had his time during a famine, and then he went to this woman for the oil and bread, cakes, and whatnot. And I mentioned how, well, what's the purpose of this chapter? The purpose of this chapter is just seeing the works of the regular days that become months, that become years in the walk of this prophet, and that these smaller works builds up their bigger works. These prophets just don't go around doing all these crazy big works. They also have a lot of mini works in the homes and the lives of individuals. And this is what we're seeing right here in chapter 4 with Elisha. Now let's read.
Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elisha, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord, and the creditors come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen. And Elisha said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaid hath not anything in the house, save a pot of oil. Then he said, Go borrow thee vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels, borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him, and shut the door upon her and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God, and he said, Go sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest.
All right. So in a nutshell, a woman that just has younger sons, and she's asking and pleading to the prophet Elisha to help her because her husband died, and he obviously left a debt because the creditors was going to come and take the two sons to be bondmen, servants, to pay off the debt of the father, because now the father is deceased. And so Elisha says, go and get as many pots as you can. And from this pot that you have of oil, I want you to pour from it, and you will fill up all the pots that you can find. And once they all filled up, they report it back to Elisha. Elisha says, now sell it. Pay off your debts. And go and be perfect. So just like I said, a little mini story in the walk of Elisha. All right, now verse 8.
And it fell on a day that Elisha passed to Shunem, where was a great woman, and she constrained him to eat bread. And so it was that as oft as he passed by, he turned in thither to eat bread. And she said unto her husband, Behold now, I perceive that this is an holy man of God, which passeth by us continually. Let us make a little chamber, I pray thee, on the wall, and let us set for him there a bed, and a table, and a stool, and a candlestick. And it shall be, when he cometh to us, that he shall turn in thither. And it fell on a day that he came thither. And he turned into the chamber and lay there.
So we have this woman providing for the prophet. What did Mashiach have to say about this? Matthew chapter 10, verse 40 through 42. He that receiveth you receiveth me, and he that receiveth me receiveth him that sent me. He that receiveth a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward, and he that receiveth a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man reward. And whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones a cup of cold water only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward. That's what we're about to read now. She is providing for a prophet of the Most High. She has realized it and she has made it her works to make it happen. And now verse 12.
And he said to Gehazi his servant, Call this Shunammite. And when he had called her, she stood before him. And he said unto him, Say now unto her, Behold, thou hast been careful for us with all this care. What is to be done for thee? Wouldst thou be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the host? And she answered, I dwell among mine own people. And he said, What then is to be done for her? And Gehazi answered, Verily, she hath no child, and her husband is old. And he said, Call her. And when he had called her, she stood in the door, and he said, About this season, according to the time of life, thou shalt embrace a son. And she said, Nay, my lord, thou man of God, do not lie unto thine handmaid. And the woman conceived, and bare a son at that season that Elisha had said unto her, according to the time of life. And when the child was grown, it fell on a day that he went out to his father to the reapers. And he said unto his father, My head, my head. And he said to a lad, Carry him to his mother. And when he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her knees till noon, and then died. And she went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God, and shut the door upon him, and went out. And she called unto her husband and said, Send me, I pray thee, one of the young men, and one of the asses, that I may run to the man of God, and come again. And he said, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, It shall be well.
All right, so verse 23. So the son that Elisha prophesied into existence has passed away in his youth, and now she's going to seek him. In verse 23, he said that, Wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon or Sabbath. So let's go a couple of precepts real quick. New moon is Sabbath. We see Ezekiel 46:1. Thus says the Most High, the gate of the inner court that looketh towards the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be open, and in the day of the new moon it shall be open. Because the new moon is regarded as a type of rest, Sabbath. Same thing in the language of Amos 8, verse 5, saying, When will the new moon be gone that we may sell corn? And the Sabbath that we may set forth wheat. So these are 2 forms of selling, is what they're describing, saying, when can we buy or sell on the new moon? When will the new moon and the Sabbath pass so we can buy or sell, is what's pretty much being said here. Because that is one of the rules of the Sabbath day, that you shall do no work, no buying or selling. And this is what we're seeing here with the work, and this is what we're seeing here with the selling. So all of that being said, just as we see in Ezekiel, how the gate to the inner court of the temple of the Most High shall be closed unless it's a Shabbat. And so what's happening here is that he's asking, why are you going to see the prophet when it's not a new moon or a Sabbath? He's implying that the prophets come together on new moon and Sabbaths. And that's pretty much what he's saying. He's saying that, well, it's not a new moon or a Sabbath that they will be present, that we gather, because who leads the prayers, who leads the readings, who leads the teachings? Priests and prophets. And so that's what he's saying. He's like, why are you going when it's not a new moon or a Sabbath? But she's like, it shall be well. She's saying, I understand, it's okay. I'm not going because it's a new moon or a Sabbath. I'm going because I'm seeing if he can save the child. But the man is like, but this is when the time we usually see him is new moon or Sabbath. And he's saying it's neither of those. And she's like, I understand that, but I'm going because I still believe that there's hope, is what's happening here. Verse 24.
Then she saddled an ass, and said to her servant, Drive, and go forward. Slack not thy riding for me, except I bid thee. So she went, and came unto the man of God to Mount Carmel. And it came to pass, when the man of God saw her afar off, that he said to Gehazi his servant, Behold, yonder is that Shunammite. Run now, I pray thee, to meet her, and say unto her, Is it well with thee? Is it well with thy husband? Is it well with the child? And she answered, It is well.
I have no idea why she says it is well, but let's continue.
And when she came to the man of God to the hill, she caught him by the feet. But Gehazi came near to thrust her away. And the man of God said, Let her alone, for her soul is vexed within her. And the Lord hath hid it from me, and hath not told me. Then she said, Did I desire a son of my Lord? Did I not say, Do not deceive me? Then he said to Gehazi, Gird up thy loins, and take my staff in thine hand, and go thy way. If thou meet any man, salute him not, and if any salute thee, answer him not again. And lay my staff upon the face of the child. And the mother of the child said, As the Lord liveth, and as thy soul liveth, I will not leave thee. And he arose and followed her. And Gehazi passed on before them, and laid the staff upon the face of the child. But there was neither voice nor hearing. Wherefore he went again to meet him, and told him, saying, The child is not awaked. And when Elisha was come into the house, behold, the child was dead, and laid upon his bed. He went in therefore, and shut the door upon them twain, and prayed unto the Lord. And he went up and lay upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he stretched himself upon the child, and the flesh of the child waxed warm.
Okay, so I have to say this. I was going through the thought process, and now reading with Elisha, it makes more sense, because we went over this in First Kings, and I was trying to give an interpretation of the best of what the information that they gave in that one. But with this one, they give more description, and it gives more clarity. And we read of the same thing in First Kings 17:21, and is much more simplified here. And he stretched himself upon the child 3 times and cried unto the Most High. And that's all it says. But here, and he lay upon the child, put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands, and he stretched himself upon the child. And then even when we go to the Septuagint here, you see, verses 34, 35. Helps even make it more sense here. And he went up and lay up upon the child, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his heads, and bowed himself upon him. And the flesh of the child grew warm. So I try to find the closest picture. I actually forgot to add it, but it's right here. So we have a combination of these two. So we have when it talks about hands upon his hands. But obviously, this is before he go down. So he's bowing down. Forgot to set this up. All right. Close enough. So a combination of these two, hands upon his hands, even though this is not stretched out. That's why I was saying he had the hands on his stomach. So if this one just had the hands stretched out like this guy, so he's bowing down, putting his hands stretched out on the child, and then he puts his head upon his head, eyes upon his eyes. And so that's that for so in Elisha, it has to be very similar, if not the same exact thing that Elijah did. And whatever is going on, obviously, is some type of spiritual healing procedure of the Most High for eyes to be locked, mouth, and hands. I think that's the whole idea. Breathing life into the child almost. It almost sounds like CPR, but it's not. Or it doesn't give the full description of mouth to mouth at all. But it's just the idea of getting close to the child and breathing upon him is that idea. So just wanted to try to break down what we're reading here, right? All right. Verse 35.
Then he returned and walked in the house to and fro, and went up and stretched himself upon him. And the child sneezed 7 times. And the child opened his eyes. And he called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. And when she was come in unto him, he said, Take up thy son. Then she went in, and fell at his feet, and bowed herself to the ground, and took up her son, and went out. And Elisha came again to Gilgal, and there was a dearth in the land. And the sons of the prophets were sitting before him. And he said unto his servant, Set on the great pot, and seethe pottage for the sons of the prophets. And one went out into the field to gather herbs, and found a wild vine, and gathered thereof wild gourds his lap full, and came and shred them into the pot of pottage, but they knew them not. So they poured out for the men to eat. And it came to pass, as they were eating of the pottage, that they cried out and said, O thou man of God, there is death in the pot. And they could not eat thereof. But he said, Then bring meal. And he cast it into the pot, and he said, Pour out for the people, that they may eat. And there was no harm in the pot. And there came a man from Baal Shalisha, and brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley, and full ears of corn in the husk thereof. And he said, Give unto the people, that they may eat. And his servitor said, What, should I set this before 100 men? He said again, Give the people, that they may eat. For thus saith the Lord, They shall eat, and shall leave thereof. So he set it before them, and they did eat, and left thereof, according to the word of the Lord.
This story is reminiscent of one of Mashiach's miracles of multiplying food for the masses. Let's read that in Matthew 15. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes and gave thanks and brake them and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat and were filled. And they took up of the broken bread or meat that was left 7 baskets full. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And he sent away the multitude and took ship. And very similar. He fed them more than what would that they thought they had, that was able to feed the masses, and they ate and the multitude left. That's exactly what happened, that they shall eat and shall leave. Very similar. Because there's nothing new. Once again, there's nothing new under the sun. And that is chapter 4. All right, last chapter of this reading, chapter 5. Let's begin.
2 Kings 5. Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honorable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valor, but he was a leper.
All right, let's go over what's a leper. Exodus 4:6. We first see one of the signs of a leprous man is when Moses is given this sign that he can produce miracles of the Most High. He is told to put his hand into thy bosom, and when he takes it out, his hand will be leprous as snow. So one of the signs of a leopard is that they will be some way, shape, or form white as snow. And then Leviticus 13:2-3. When a man shall have in the skin of his flesh arising a scab or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest and unto one of the sons of the priest. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. All right, so just a quick recap on what is leprosy. Verse 2.
And the Syrians had gone out by companies, and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. And the king of Syria said, Go to, go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed, and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment.
I first want to say this, man, this has been a topic of late, that there are not many teachers, but there are many messengers. There shouldn't and there never will be many teachers, but there will be many messengers. And let's remember, everything that will happen in this chapter started with a simple message from a servant. And she said, and this is like they said, a little maid from the land of Israel, Israelite, most likely, obviously. And she said unto her mistress, Would Elohim Ma'adan were with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him from his leprosy. That's all this woman did. And let's see what this little bitty message, this seed that will be planted in Naaman's wife, will be sent to her husband. And let's see what will happen from this little bitty message from this servant maid.
And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes, and said, Am I God to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha the man of God had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go, and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought, he will surely come out to me, and stand, and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hand over the place, and recover the leper.
And we see the Most High, and this is my favorite chapter of this week. This chapter gives us gives us a clear example of how he works, that he can use anyone. He can use anyone. He can use this little maidservant that was brought in their land by being a captive. He can use her. And then Naaman, if Naaman wants to be healed by the Most High, you're going to have to humble yourself, Naaman. This is how the Most High works. Naaman wanted Elijah to come out and do something crazy. Elisha knew not to come and speak to Naaman. That's what Naaman wanted. Naaman wanted to come and speak to Elisha himself. He came all the way to his door, and Elisha sent someone else to see him, because this is the Most High's doing. This is why immediately afterwards, Naaman was wroth. He will surely come out to me and stand. He felt disrespected that Elisha didn't come himself, because that was the test, Naaman. Just let's keep reading, though. I love it. Verse 12.
And Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Then went he down, and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God. And his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him. And he said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant.
Man, a Gentile just converted to the Most High's ways. And what did I say? It started off with simply someone delivering a message. And then on his path, he had to humble himself. This is life in a storybook right here, guys. This is how it works. You're going to get a message if you are willing, but you're going to have to humble yourself along the way. But that little servant maid didn't need to do anything more for this man to be saved other than delivering a message. Elisha knew exactly what he needed to do, and now this man is a believer. All praises. Verse 16.
But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules, burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Lord. In this thing the Lord pardon thy servant, that when my master goeth into the house of Rimmon to worship there, and he leaneth on my hand, and I bow myself in the house of Rimmon, when I bow down myself in the house of Rimmon, the Lord pardon thy servant in this thing. And he said unto him, Go in peace. So he departed from him a little way.
Man, I love this story. This is Naaman is a new convert to the faith, and he already knows better than 90+% of the people alive today. When you believe that the Most High of the book that we call the Bible is the true Elohim, you drop everything else and you stop practicing any other rituals with any other gods. And Naaman is right here saying that for thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto other gods, but unto the Most High. He knew immediately. This is how you know Naaman was called. The moment he realized that he was the true Elohim, he dropped everything. How many of us has been in that boat that when we realize that the holidays of the world and all of these things, we drop what we're doing. We're witnessing this in ancient times. And then he's like, pardon me, because I'm going to have to go back to work. And when my master, the king, is doing these rituals, I'm going to have to be there, but I'm not doing any type of worship, burnt offerings, or sacrifice with this God. I'm just got to go home, and I'm going to be in the presence, and I'm going to have to deal with it. Please pardon me. He gets it. He gets it more than many people today. That's what this is about. When you realize this is the true Elohim, you drop everything in your life and you pray for forgiveness. You pray for mercy. That's why I love this story. I love this story that I forgot about. I didn't remember this at all from the times I read it before. I read this like it was the first time I read it. And I was like, wow, what a small example from the messenger to the test of pride to him realizing he found the true Most High. It's a testimony of this walk. And I feel like we should all bookmark this page because I absolutely love it. 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1 through 19, highlight all of it. Such a great story in the Old Testament to refer back to. All right. I just really wanted to express that because I absolutely loved it. And we see this similar story also in Luke 17 with other Gentiles being cleansed from leprosy. I think, what was it? Aki Keenan said a lot of Elisha's miracles are foreshadowing of Mashiach. And here's another story from raising of the dead to the providing of food, cleansing, healing the sick, the water. Now we have the leprosy story here. And it came to pass as he went to Jerusalem that he passed through the midst of Samaria and Galilee. And look at this. Same area, same type of folks. Oh, well, my mistaken. That person is from Syria, not Samaria. But as he entered into the certain village, there met him 10 men that were lepers, which stood afar off, and they lifted up their voices and said, Yasha, Master, have mercy on us. And when he saw them, he said unto them, go show yourselves unto the priests. And it came to pass that as they went, they were cleansed. And one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back and with a loud voice glorified Elohim. Here's the test. Everything's a test, Yasharallah. And he fell down on his face at his feet and given him thanks. And he was a Samaritan. And Yasha answering said, Were there not 10 cleansed? But where are the 9? There are not found that return to give glory to Elohim, save this stranger. And he said unto him, Arise, go thy way, thy faith has made thee whole. Even in this story, there was a message of faith that who is actually turning their life to the Most High after the miracle. That is what Naaman is the example of. If you're not turning your life to the Most High that healed you, then what was the true reason for you getting healed? That's the purpose. The miracles is a testimony of his righteousness, his mercy, his glory and power. If you didn't get that, you've missed the message. That's the point. And then also, in closing, that the message is that you grab upon the covenant that is given unto the people the Most High have promised. Exodus 20, verse 3 and 5, that thou shalt have no other gods before me. Naaman didn't even know the Torah, and he knew this. He knew that he couldn't serve other gods. Thou shalt not make any unto thee any graven image. Naaman knew this. He says that he will not bow to them. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Tell me this. How does a Gentile that doesn't know the laws of the land of the Israelites, it's no way he knew the Torah. He's a new convert. But his ruach put him in line. He knew better right away. Because one law and one manner shall be for you and for the stranger that sojourns with you. Amen and amen. All right, let's read the rest of chapter 5, verse 20. And we will see that the testing of this story isn't over. I've said this before just within this fellowship, this community, that when other people are sinning or being tested out of sin, like Naaman, that there are people around you that are also being tested on the matter from their perspective and in their position, how they react to a judgment or the outcome comes. And we're going to see that this happens right here in this chapter. I love this chapter. So many lessons to learn. Verse 20.
But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master hath spared Naaman the Syrian in not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. And when Naaman saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him and said, Is all well? And he said, All is well. My master hath sent me, saying, Behold, even now there be come to me from Mount Ephraim 2 young men of the sons of the prophets. Give them, I pray thee, a talent of silver and 2 changes of garments. And Naaman said, Be content, take 2 talents. And he urged him, and bound 2 talents of silver in 2 bags, with 2 changes of garments, and laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bare them before him. And when he came to the tower, he took them from their hand, and bestowed them in the house. And he let the men go, and they departed. But he went in and stood before his master. And Elisha said unto him, Whence comest thou, Gehazi? And he said, Thy servant went no whither. And he said unto him, Went not mine heart with thee, when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? Is it a time to receive money, and to receive garments and oliveyards, and vineyards, and sheep, and oxen, and men servants, and maid servants? The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence, a leper as white as snow.
Wow. And that's what a lot of people will say right here could be the idea of the origin of what albino. His whole body was cursed. A black man, black attributes from a black father, but he's white as snow. And if you go into the Torah, someone that is completely white is pronounced clean because that's what they are. And so this is a clean man since his whole body is going to be white and that is going to be in his generations as we read his seed forever. But just an interesting point here. And then we see the testing of Gehazi, and this was set up the same reason why Elisha didn't meet up with Naaman and he sent a servant to test his pride was the same reason why Elisha in front of Gehazi refused the gifts, because it's not like Elisha refuses every gift that has ever been given to him. Prophets are, given gifts throughout scripture. But this time he says, I don't want it. And that was the whole point of that, was to test Gehazi. This is what I'm talking about. You don't know when you're getting tested. The life you live and how you live it is the test. He didn't know before he did it that this was of the Most High, to see, will his greed overtake him? He didn't see it in real time. The fact that he hasn't been working on his character and trying to rid himself from this spirit of greed was the problem from the beginning. This was just a story in time set up for one individual to either prove his righteousness or not. And that's what this whole chapter is about. Stories that can happen to anyone day to day. The Most High can choose anybody that doesn't know anything about him to send a message, and for him to have eyes to see and ears to hear in the next day, in the next season, and get his life together. But you can also be tested in the same breath, in the same story, from another perspective, in a different position. So with that being said, Yasharallah, thank y'all for joining me. And I pray that you've not only gained understanding, but you have gained faith in this walk, that you understand that all Abba wants us to do is to have faith, keep his commandments, and hold a character that is righteous according to the what's it called? What did Paul fruits of the Spirit. But Shabbat Shalom. Thank y'all for joining me. See y'all next week.